Something is happening behind the scenes, and this time it's not another palace leak.
Was a victim of the media. She was a master of the media and a master of media manipulation. They went back to America feeling very, very chagrined, very annoyed that they didn't get the exposure they wanted, especially. Krishna went berserk and said that he'd never spoken to me.
Not another Netflix trailer, not another carefully staged interview. This feels different because when investigative author Tom Bower makes a quiet comment and Prince Harry is reported to react strongly, people pay attention. Not because it's gossip, but because it strikes at the foundation of the Sussex narrative. For years, critics have argued that parts of the story don't quite line up, timelines that feel rushed, traditions that were skipped, details that were never fully clarified. Now those same questions are resurfacing louder than ever, and if the current discussion keeps gaining traction, the story Harry and Meghan built their post-royal life on doesn't just wobble, it starts to crack.
Why did the palace stay quiet? Why did the children never appear in the same way William and Kate's children did? Rumors swirled, questions.
This is why Tom Bower matters in this conversation. He isn't a tabloid blogger chasing clicks. He has built his career writing about powerful people who don't want to be written about. He wrote about Charles long before he became king, documented how reputations were rebuilt after public collapse, and when Meghan Markle entered the royal picture, he approached it the same way he always does, as a case study in power, influence and control. Bower has repeatedly said that Meghan didn't simply fall victim to the media, but understood it and used it strategically. That alone isn't a crime, but it becomes significant when the entire Sussex brand is built on the idea of escaping exposure while simultaneously monetizing it. Bower hasn't accused or alleged criminal behavior, he has questioned whether parts of the public narrative were shaped because money became the central pressure point, and that framing changes everything. After leaving royal duties, Harry and Meghan didn't walk into endless wealth, they walked into contracts. Netflix, publishing, speaking deals. Critics keep returning to one key point: those deals require content. Walking away doesn't just mean losing income, it means losing relevance, leverage, and the lifestyle that comes with it. According to commentators, that's the real trap, not palace control, but contractual dependence. Every story has to escalate, every reveal has to go further than the last, and every chapter has to justify the next paycheck.
On a manhunt, she was looking for a husband and an English husband, and Harry was available.
That's why people argue the Sussexes can't suddenly pivot into privacy or quietly disappear, because silence doesn't pay. This is also why the children became the flashpoint. No one disputes that Archie Mountbatten-Windsor and Lilibet Mountbatten-Windsor exist. That's not the debate. The debate is about presentation, not parenthood. Critics noticed early on that the Sussex pregnancies were handled very differently from royal tradition: no hospital steps photos, no standard medical confirmations, no public briefings that mirrored previous royal births. Privacy alone isn't suspicious, but when you contrast this with Prince William and Catherine and how their children were presented, the difference is stark. The monarchy runs on documentation, lineage isn't symbolic, it's structural, so when protocol breaks, people don't just shrug, they ask why. For years, online forums quietly tracked what they saw as inconsistencies. Nothing illegal, nothing proven, just unanswered questions, pregnancy timelines that felt compressed, statements about hospital stays that didn't align with typical procedures, photos that looked unusually curated.
Sources say he is absolutely crashing out. He had just been told about a claim made live by investigative author Tom Bower.
Most people dismissed it until silence became the default response. Psychologically, silence doesn't end speculation, it feeds it, especially when public figures have built careers on telling their truth. Another detail critics can't ignore is the royal family's visible distance from Archie and Lilibet. There are no regular birthday tributes, no public family photos, no documented grandparent moments like those seen with William's children. Some analysts argue this isn't punishment but insulation. A theory emphasized as a theory, not a fact, suggests the palace may be keeping formal distance in case future complications arise, neither confirming nor denying anything, simply not entangling itself too closely. In a monarchy, ambiguity can be safer than endorsement. This speculation hits Harry particularly hard. Sources sympathetic to him say he's struggling privately.
Now he's going to have to raise his game to make his book saleable, and that's what we all wait to see, what he's going to...
He built his post-royal identity around healing, therapy, and breaking generational trauma, and fatherhood was supposed to anchor him. When online speculation touches his children, even unfairly, it cuts deep. Critics argue he's trapped between two impossible choices: defend his family with transparency or protect privacy, and accept permanent suspicion, with no neutral ground in between. Observers often note a contrast in how the couple responds. Harry reacts emotionally, while Meghan is seen as responding strategically through legal letters, narrative control, and silence as a tool. But the harder the clampdown, the louder the backlash becomes, because control reads as confidence only until it starts to look like avoidance. That shift is what many believe is happening now.
Shout into the void and hope something sticks. He waits. He listens. He lets the room fill with tension.
The DNA test debate refuses to die for the same reason. No one can force testing, and no one is entitled to private medical data, but public opinion doesn't run on legality, it runs on optics. Critics argue a test would end speculation overnight, while supporters counter that no one owes the public proof. That tension sits at the core of the storm, because in a monarchy legitimacy isn't emotional, it's institutional. Ultimately, this isn't about cruelty or children. It's about what happens when a public narrative becomes so controlled that people stop trusting it. The Sussex story was built on authenticity, and once that authenticity is questioned, everything attached to it weakens. So here we are, not with answers, but with questions that refuse to disappear. Will Harry and Meghan address this head-on, continue to stay silent, or let this become another unresolved chapter in a story already heavy with controversy? One thing is clear: silence isn't neutral anymore. Drop your thoughts in the comments, decide whether these questions deserve answers or whether a line should be drawn here. And subscribe for what's coming next, because this story isn't over. What makes this chapter especially volatile is that it isn't being driven by tabloids alone anymore. It's being fueled by commentators, analysts, and online communities that dissect patterns rather than headlines. Screenshots, timelines, archived interviews, and past statements are constantly being re-examined, not because everyone wants to believe something sinister, but because unanswered questions naturally attract attention. The longer those questions linger, the more they become part of the permanent public record. For Harry, this threatens the one role he's consistently framed as sacred, being a father who protects his children from the damage he experienced growing up. For Meghan, it challenges the carefully constructed image of control, confidence, and narrative mastery. Whether fair or unfair, this scrutiny is now shaping how the public interprets everything they do next. New projects, new interviews, even silence itself will be filtered through this lens. And that's the real risk here. Not a single rumor, not one theory, but the slow erosion of trust. Once audiences start doubting the framework of a story, every future chapter is read with suspicion. Unless something shifts decisively, these questions won't fade with time. They'll follow the Sussexes into every appearance, every deal, and every attempt to move on, quietly redefining how history remembers this chapter of the royal saga.